Hey Emma, I wanted to give you some verbal feedback to go with my markups. I don't have very many markups, but I wanted to talk about them because there's a little bit more work you need to do. I have a feeling you might not have watched the videos of the pivot activity and also kind of the summary of the results. For instance, when we looked at it, you guys did a discussion board. I gave some feedback. And ultimately, we were like, what could we change? Okay. And so there's a summary video. We could change the hanging mass values, right? We could measure mass, so we could change it, and that would be an independent variable. But guess what? We could also change the spring type, right? So you could change that spring type and see how it impacted um, the period. And the last thing was the displacement, right? And so in the lab, they give you options of selecting different masses, selecting different K values, and selecting different displacements. Now, there are only three, but it really does work out just fine. And then time intervals, okay? Now, I see that you read down here in data tables, and this was just an example, but in the video, again, with the tools that it gives you a stopwatch, and you can actually find using just like a pause and advancing the slide for one full cycle, you can find the period of one cycle because they give you a timer that's just kind of giving you a frame by frame time. And that's going to give you more accurate data because it looks like you used a stopwatch as I provided or listed. Okay. So use the stopwatch in that activity and it'll give you more accurate data. Okay. So spring A, amplitude 3, change the hanging mass. That's great data. 1 by 100 gram increments. That's fantastic. And then you looked at the calculated time, which I'm assuming is period because I don't know what the time, you didn't give me those units. Okay. So from there, we got data. I was hoping to see data from that, but it looks like you used this to do linearized below, and I don't know what this data means because it's got the same titles as above. Time 1, time 2, calculated time. Time 1, time 2, calculated time. So how can these be the same, right? These same titles, but I'm getting different time. Okay, so you need to either fire labels, right, and so on. So what have you done, right? So let's see if we can figure it out from the graphs what you've done. Okay, so I've calculated time of one cycle over here. Let's see if I can draw on that versus hanging mass and grams. And you said it was linear. Honestly, I don't know. You didn't give me a 0, 0. Always have to include 0, 0 to ensure it's a trend. Okay, it looks like it. Maybe using a stopwatch yourself in the 10 cycles might have made a difference. I'm not 100% sure what you did for your methods. Okay. And then graph 2, which I'm assuming is linearized, I still have calculated time versus hanging mass, but I've got different now. Did you square something? Did you square root something? I don't know. And don't forget 0, 0. Okay. And then again, still calculated time, one cycle, square root of mass. Oh, okay. Don't have a 0, 0, and whatever. So the trend, etc., we're not 100% sure. It's not giving us great data. Maybe you were saying it was a square root. But ultimately, I've got some conflicting information on this write-up. Do you get what I'm saying? So my expectations, when you kind of rework, I'd love for you to kind of, and maybe you have to, I know it's going to take some time. And honestly, if you've got this accurate reading of time that they've given with the pivot, do you need to do 2 separate timing, right? Do you need to do 10 cycles, or could you just do 1 cycle once because it's pretty accurate, right? Think of your methods a little bit. Okay, so maybe you're collecting new data for your hanging mass, but also I need to include right? The K values. You can change the K values and you can change your displacement and see what those trends are. Go and rework that. I know it's kind of a pain. I thought I was clear, but you can't do that in writing ever as a teacher. So I just want to give you another shot to rework this to get a 40 out of 40. Okay. Hope these verbal comments help you. And sorry about that glitch in the video. And I apologize. I know it's kind of a pain to resubmit, but one of the main things I want you to get from this class is that scientific methods aspect. How do I explore this? And ultimately, I'm going to be taking your data and everyone's data, probably about 15 people,